Okay, we're going to now perform, I'm going to show you the procedure for how to do the copper and silver nitrate lab. So this is our first reaction that's part of the chemical reactions. Some of what we're doing in chemical reactions is we're learning how to balance chemical equations, make sure that we don't lose any or add any atoms. But a lot of it too is just to understand what's happening in the reaction, look at it, observe it, be able to describe it, and then draw particle models. So this is what we're doing with this lab. In this one, we're going to take some copper metal and we're going to react it with a solution of silver nitrate. Now here's what it looks like as far as the reactants, right? For a chemical reaction, we're starting with, sometimes it can be just one reactant that we react, sometimes two, sometimes more than two, so 3 or 4 or whatever. So I'm going to take some solid copper, right? So here's my symbol for copper, copper metal. It's neutral. And this parentheses S means that it's going to be in the solid form. Silver nitrate, aqueous, means in solution with water. So this is an ionic compound. Now we haven't really talked about what nitrate is yet. That's coming later in AP chemistry. It's just another type of ion. Silver, in this case, is single plus. Nitrate is single minus. So it's silver nitrate in solution. That means these things, I've got silver ions surrounded by water and nitrate ions surrounded by water. And that part is just, that's what a solution is, right? Something in the water. And it's silver, these ions, ionic compounds, separate out, the positive and negative ions separate out when they go into solution. So we're going to mix these two things and cause a reaction. So here's the procedure. In your lab kit, you had a test tube. Now on this thing you had a ring clamp too. Just take the ring clamp away, that's for the next lab. So you had this test tube clamp. They look a little different sometimes, but test tube clamp. You had a test tube with the wire in it, with the copper wire. What you need to do first is take this copper wire and weigh it as accurately as you can. Now you're going to lose some copper in this one, but it's not going to be a very big mass. So get this down to 1/100 of a gram as closely as you can. Just test your scale skills with this. Get the get the weight of the copper wire as close as you can. After you've weighed it, put it back in the test tube. Clamp it on. Some of your clamps, I tried to check to make sure they all are in good shape. If you're uncertain, you can kind of lower it. If it tends to, sometimes the threads slip, lower it down so it's just right at the edge. I'm going to raise mine up because I'm confident in this clamp. And I'm ready to go, right? So now my copper has already been weighed. It's in the test tube. The test tube is where the reaction is going to happen. I'm going to take my silver nitrate solution. I pre-measured it. It's 20 milliliters. And just dump the whole contents in there. As carefully as you can. I'm setting a good example by having my goggles on. If you get a little bit on you, just wash it off to be sure. Now I had shown the people that picked it up, I purposely spilled this to see how much of a stain. I got some little black stains on my skin. They will not wash off, but they will wear off as those layers of skin wear off. So in 2 or 3 days, those little black stains will be gone. And that's the first part. Now, importantly, if you wash your test tube with water because you feel like, well, I want to make sure it's clean, tap water, that's not a good idea. I wash it with tap water, that's fine, but then rinse it with deionized water. In this step, if you see any like white cloudiness, a small amount, doesn't a certain amount of like kind of white, it looks a little milky white, somewhere you had tap water in there and your lab's messed up. You're gonna have to get some more materials. If it's just a little bit of milky white, then okay. So what I see right away is something's growing on the copper wire. So something's growing on that thing, and what it is actually is silver metal. So in this reaction, these are our reactants, the solid copper and the silver nitrate solution. What's forming, one of the products is solid silver. And then I want to show the copper is going into solution with the nitrate, so we'll get to that part when we do our conclusion. But I can actually see solid silver metal. It looks kind of like moss, but it's a little sparkly. It's kind of an interesting thing to work at. What I would like for you to do is take a photograph kind of early on, just as it's starting to form, and then later take a photograph. Now, this is not a very fast reaction, so I can see some immediately, but it takes a little while, at least an hour. So I would wait an hour to 2. But I would do this next step within the same day, right? So I let this sit out. I pre-did this. And so I'll hold it a little closer at first. So this is what it looks like afterwards. I would take a picture of it afterwards. It looked pretty close to this much within, say, an hour and a half. What's happened is it almost looks like stalactites or stalagmites, whatever, kind of growing and hanging off of there. So that is actually silver metal. We're not used to silver metal looking like that because it's usually, you know, polished and stuff, but this is grown atom by atom. So it's growing atom by atom, just kind of clinging on and adding on there. So if we were to melt this down and polish it all up, it would look like shiny silver metal. So now what we want to do is we want to determine how much silver metal did we get, and we want to try and find the ratio. So I have not balanced this, right? Because I don't even know exactly what the products are. So what is it? How many coppers react for how many silver nitrates? And I want to determine that, and we're going to use lab data to determine that. So what we've got to do is I want to weigh the copper wire after. It should have lost some mass, and I want to weigh the silver metal that formed. So part of this, what we're looking at, so reactions go and they go and they go until something runs out. Well, we want to see what ran out. So we're going to separate everything out, and here's the procedure for doing that. I'm going to take the copper wire, shake all the silver off. So if you shook this thing before, it kind of messes, it doesn't look as nice, it's just not as pretty. I'm going to shake all that off. I want to make sure I got all this stuff off. So here's the first time you use the squirt bottle, unless you used it to clean the test tube first. I'm going to try and get it all back into the test tube and squirt it off like that. If there's any stubborn silver metal that wants to cling, I got a little bit there. I'm going to actually kind of loosen it with the stir rod. Kind of put that stir rod in there. Okay, I really want to get all that silver metal in. So if it's stuck, I'm going to kind of use this. Not using too much. Notice I have not filled up the test tube. Okay, now, so what? Now I've separated the copper metal out. Before we weigh this after, we want it to dry off. I could dry it with a paper towel, but I want to air dry it so I can shake it out a little bit, air dry it. So we're going to let that sit for several minutes, maybe an hour, to dry out. And now I'm going to take this carefully, remove it from the test tube clamp, and I'm done with this setup. And now, in order to do this next step, I really need to get, I need more space. What I would do, you don't have a ton of DI water, but I think enough, deionize. Just a little rinse like that. Make sure your beaker's clean, and then kind of give it that deionized, not tap water, deionized water rinse from your bottle. And then I'm going to dump it in. I'm going to dump it all into this beaker. The 250 ml beaker is the one I'm using. Did I get all of it? I'm going to go ahead and move this closer. What I can do is take the squirt bottle and kind of squirt to make sure everything's in. Did I get all of the silver metal? I think so. I'll give another extra little squirt. Now, what I've got is the silver metal, but all that copper solution, all that solution's still in there. We're going to do a process that we call decanting, and I need to adjust my angle a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to decant it or pour it into a beaker. Could I dump it in the sink? I could, but to make sure I don't lose anything, so this beaker is basically going to, this other beaker is going to be our waste beaker. So decanting is this, it's carefully, slowly pouring off the liquid, trying to not let any solution go. I don't have to get rid of all the liquid. I had this stir rod here to be sure, just to block any solids that were trying to come out. You might lose a few little silver flakes. Oops, bad example. There's my goggles. And now I've got the silver metal in here, but there's still some of that solution. The solution has some copper ions and other things and nitrate. I want to get rid of it. So what I'm going to do is, now you use this bottle, and I'm just going to squirt this thing around and kind of wash my silver. We're going to do this 3 times, and then I decant. I'm losing a little bit of silver flakes, but not much. And you just repeat that, right? I'm just going to do it twice. I want you to do it at least 3 times. So I gave you, you can see I didn't use that much of my deionized water. And decant. Do that 3 times, 4 times if you want. And try and get as much of the liquid as you can, because it'll make the drying go faster. Without losing solid. There. So now I've got some pretty clean silver metal. I can't get the mass of this yet because I have because it's not just silver metal in there, it's silver metal and water. So I've got to let this dry. I could leave it sitting out and air dry it, but that would probably take several hours. Or if you want carefully, if you have a toaster, obviously not the microwave, that's metal, but you can put it in a warm place, put it in a sunny window, or put it in an oven or a toaster oven at a very low temperature. Not a microwave, don't put metal in the microwave. And let that dry, right? And then we're gonna get the mass of this thing. If you forgot, and I didn't put that in the instruction, well, weigh this beaker first, clean, dry beaker first, and then you're gonna weigh it with the silver metal. If you forget, there's a way around that, in that I could just weigh it with the metal and then clean the metal out and then weigh the beaker after. So this was, now I've got clean metal, wet metal. When it dries, I have separated my silver metal out through the decanting and rinsing process. I'm going to get the mass of the silver, and we'll see, we'll compare. Make sure you weigh your copper wire after carefully. The loss of mass of copper is going to be pretty small. So what happened is, I can tell which material ran out. Obviously, I've got excess copper. I lost some. This thing got skinnier, right? It lost weight. So where'd that copper metal go? It went into the solution, and now I've rinsed that out. Once you've got this, the blue copper is slightly hazardous. It's pretty dilute at this point. But you can go ahead and dump this down the sink and rinse it all out. But do be careful with this. Don't just leave it out. Take this, dump it down the sink. To be safe, just plenty of water going as you run it down. And that's ready to go. So then the next video we'll get into our conclusions, what the calculations we'll do, what the conclusions, particle models, etc.